Hi, my name is Benedict for Higher Hertz. In this video we will be taking a bit of a deep dive look into Combinator II and how to use it. We'll start with the more general information, then we'll dig right into actually building a combinator, and I'll take you through all the steps, including making a cool faceplate for yourself. So while this is not what we're going to build up here, space tape, this is one I built earlier. What you see is what looks to be a straight device, a native device. It could be a rack extension. It could even be a native device in terms of how it looks, because we can access everything straight up front. In reality, however, it's a VST. So traditionally with the VST, we had this, like we could see this box here, but we couldn't interact with it, which means we had to find our box, open the VST, interact with it, and then probably close it to get rid of the clutter. Whereas now, get that right, we can duplicate the functionality of a lot more inner devices than we could before. And what we couldn't do before is that we can make these beautiful face plates. We will start with the general stuff. What? Haircut? Yes, I did. Thank you very much. What is a combinator? Here are a couple I made much earlier. These are Combinator 1s, so this will help us see the difference. What you just saw obviously looks quite different from what you see here. This is the standard original combinator with 4 knobs and 4 buttons, and that's where they were. You could put a face plate on them, but you were limited in what you could do. But the combinator was a reasonably groundbreaking device in that we could take several devices, put them into one box, and therefore they would behave as one. So here we can hear that there are effects. We've got a synthesizer and a couple of effects. We can press the make all the effects go away button. But we could also set it up so that we could select controls that we wanted and have them work as what other people called macros. Now, this was such a forward-looking design, not to say they invented the concept, but it was such a forward-looking design and functionality that eventually it became industry standard. We're seeing other manufacturers still rolling out devices with macros, which give you commonly 4 knobs and 4 buttons. Very successful device. Further, you could get into having a lot more content in them. There was no particular limit as to how much content you could put inside a combinator. So we could be running 2 instruments. We can get rid of the pad. We'll turn off the arpeggiator. So what we had inside here was 2 discrete synths. A pad going through its effects, this arpeggiator with, well, an arpeggiator. So a second synth, the pair of them together with their effects. The combinator was a tremendously powerful device, but for quite some time there had been some frustration with the limits of it, in the sense that we were stuck with these 4 knobs and 4 buttons, and we were stuck with the layout. And I, amongst many other people, kept saying, can we have something that's going to behave more like SynthEdit, as in that we can create our own faceplates and therefore transition this box with macros into something that feels more like a fully fledged synth. And that entered Combinator 2 with the Reason 12 update. The technical stuff. Combinator 2 brought us a massive update, so up to 32 knobs and 32 buttons. So from 4+4 to 32. It's 8 more CV inputs, so that's the ability to plug something from somewhere like an LFO into the back of the thing, and so that you can use to control either a knob or button that you've created, or just directly control something through the inner matrix. You can freely create the faceplate, as I've spoken about, and we will go through in part 2 of this. You could choose knobs, buttons, wheels, and they've promised that over the next few months there will be more choice for knobs, buttons, wheels to come. And as I keep talking about, Combinator has really now become a far more complete rack dweller. As you saw there with Space Tape, it transitions from being something that we can use in the rack to being as present as a native rack device. Let's look at how we might create a combination. There's one option here, but I'm going to show you another option first. We will add a utility and a combinator. So down here, I've now added a combinator. It's got MIDI focus, but it doesn't do anything. Why? Because there's nothing in it. The combinator comes looking like Combinator 1. It automatically defaults to having these 4 and 4. And that's good because it means that Combinator 1 patch is open. We've got a standard playing field that we're familiar with. It now comes inbuilt with a mixer. You would have noticed with the last combinator, if you're looking, I had to use a mixer to put in more than one instrument. Now, there's a very simple mixer built in. Initially, some people were trying to be like, oh, but it doesn't have all the features of a mixer. No, this is what's called a line mixer. It's just a summing mixer. So we can plug stuff into it and stuff will come out. Brilliant. That saves us having to add a device that we had before, and they very kindly put a master level on it, because by the time you've put 48 synths inside a combinator, it's possible that it's very loud. So, small thing, very nice. You won't necessarily need to use it. It comes folded up, and you can probably leave it that way. So we create our combinator, and then we can add things to it. Let's add an instrument. Now, at the moment, it doesn't play any differently than if it was just wired directly in. That's cool, because we're not asking it to do anything different. But we can then start to add effects. Let's add, what shall we add? Let's add a scream, so we feel a little bit more manly about ourselves. Nice. And nothing is worth anything without some delays. Yay. If I like that, I can hit the save button and save it off. And that's actually inside one of my refills that I'm making at the moment. And then when somebody comes to open that combinator, you see exactly what they're going to get. It's going to be this. It can be all closed up. We can assign some controls, which we will do in the second half of this. That's one way of doing it, which is when you know what you're doing. From the beginning, you're going to do that. And you insert the instruments and what have you. Oh, actually, let me just show you before we undo that. If I decided I didn't want these things combined anymore, because it just doesn't serve my purpose for them to all be jammed in a box like this, I can click and uncombine, which means exactly the same. It sounds no different. Whether something's in a combinator or not, it sounds no different. The other way that you will see, and prepared this one earlier, is that we may have started already with our line of devices. So I've got this collection of things, which to me, I want to be treating as though they're one sound, one device. So enter the idea of combining. If I just shift click them all, sorry I have to scroll a little bit more because I have embiggened using the Reason 12 feature, but I can select everything, right click, not on a button, and go combine. Oh look, they've now been put into a box. So if I close up that, I could do this all day. That has given us the beginnings of a combinator. Well, it is a combinator, it's just not, it's not an elegant combinator yet. we'll start to look through, and this is the bit that gets a bit more complex. So if you're just wanting to know, oh, well, what's Combinator, what's it going to do, you can bail here. But it's only a matter of time before you go, how do I get my Combinator looking as sexy as somebody else's? And this is where we have to start digging into things. So there are a couple of ways of making this happen. But quite honestly, planning is probably the first important thing that we want to do. We want to have a sense of what it is that we are going to create. We don't want, nor do we have the ability, rationally, to pull every single knob and button off here. So there will be a few knobs and buttons that we want to pull out of our meta device and put on the front to give ourselves the control that we need, either to save this off as a preset for later use, or need within the context of the piece and therefore the mix that we are making. So we'll sit around and have a little bit of a think about what they should be. In the meantime, let's look at how some of this works. We'll turn off the devices for the moment. We open the editor. This is how we edit what does what and how our combinator looks and behaves. We'll go into the configuration because we really should start there before we start defining knobs and buttons. It will be very tempting to start straight away assigning things to knobs and buttons. And if you're just going with the basic standard combinator, 2 or 4 of these things, it's probably not a real problem. But seeing we're going to try to make a fancier, sexier faceplate, we need a strategy. If we don't have a strategy and some plans to make it happen, we're just going to kind of put ourselves in a dead end. So first thing, we move ourselves to configure. Now this is configuring this. We will start with the panel. The panel is this bit here. Specifically, you can control from here to here. You've got a little bit of control up here, but really you're working from here to here. We can choose how many rack units. Now, rack units is quite literally because in the old days you had a 19-inch rack. It was decided that all gear would be 19 inches wide with little rack ears with holes in them for screws, and you could bolt them into a rack, which is literally what our rack in here looks like. So we can have a 1U, which is the thin device. We can have 2 units, which is this classic size. It's a very nice, comfortable size for most things. We can go medium, which gets bigger, big. Oh, keep pressing the wrong button because it moves. We can start to get into the ridiculous. And then, yeah, really, you couldn't have been more organized. But there are good reasons why we might want a faceplate this big. And if you're using it and it's not overawing what you're doing, as in not just too damn big, then go for it. But for the moment, let's work in probably a 2U. Actually, no, I think no. I'm going to take a call here and say I think we might want a 3. We can choose what color we want our faceplate to be. Choose your colors wisely. While it's very tempting to go for dramatic colors, they become difficult to work with, and it can be very difficult to see. Orange actually is quite good. If you're after a dramatic color, orange is quite good. So if you're thinking, oh, these are a little bit beige, there's a reason why they are a little beige or a little pastel, because you still want contrast. See here, these are getting a little hard to read. We can deal with that later. We can go with no backdrop whatsoever, which means that this is just pure color. We can go with the default, which is a kind of a brushed aluminium sort of a look. Very nice, very standard sort of a thing. We can also go into loading our own, which we will go right into later. But we will stay with something fairly simple for now, a lightish grey. This shows us sizes, which we'll come back to later. And if you are working with an original Combinator 1, then you want the legacy backdrop. And you can recolor or even turn off quite a lot of the labelings. So if you have gone for, let's say, a black faceplate, you would want to keep that visible, or turn it off entirely so that you replace the labeling with your own when we get into the more exciting stuff later. Now we've got our controls. You've got the default ones there already. I'm going to say, let's kill them all, because it's the best way to learn. So we need to develop a sense, as I said before, of what is our device up front going to do. Obviously, I'm thinking we might need a filter, so we'll name it. If you don't name them, you will be super lost later. Let's fix the cap. And resonance. I can drag these around, put them wherever I want. There is no sort of thing to stop me from wherever I want to put anything. There is, however, a very nice thing that will show you alignment relative to any other knob, both vertical and horizontal. And that works super nicely. So use that. So you set, okay, whatever you want to be your center or your default shape for how your knobs and buttons are going to lay out, and then you move your other knobs and buttons to match them. Very elegant, very, very elegant. A lot of other places you've got click to these things, and while that works nicely, this is really nice because you're not sort of going, oh, I think it's there, and then discovering that it's not there. This tells you that it's there. Cool. Now we can get into, we choose the control that we want to control. It's hard to find the word there. Type it's control. We've got the name is changed there, not here. We can choose what type of knob. And as I said before, the promise is that over the next month or so, we should be getting more knob choices. Cool. I personally would like to see a load your own using the standard image strip. So a PNG image strip, which is exactly how it's done in Synth Edit. And that way I can make my own knobs and bring them in. And that way, well, they'll be my knobs. So we can run through a pretty decent grab bag of knobs of different styles and sizes. Seeing this has some vintage synthism to it, then I think we go with a vintage of some kind. Because the filter is often the thing that we're the most excited about, then let's make it big. That becomes sort of the center point for our instrument. We can change the color of the scaling around it. We can show the labeling or not. We can change the color of the text. And we can also reposition the text. We have to see what we're doing. There have been some people already who started with a 1U, been upset because they couldn't keep their text in the right place. You've just got to position it right or left, and then you can go to a 1U. Not a problem. It has been thought about. You've just got to sort of see yourself ahead here. And of course, as I mentioned before, you can just get rid of it entirely. So you can create all your text labeling, as you might have noticed with Space Tape. All of that was done on the panel that I created later, which I will show you. For the moment, we'll keep it on, because if you go turning them off, then you will create some difficulties for yourself in trying to remember which one is which. Let's put them at the top for the moment. And even though these are different sizes, you see how they're saying we can line them top, we can line them center, we can line them bottom. So we can have our knobs very nicely arranged. Let's keep those two and tuck them together. They're the first things that I'm going to want. It's best if I plan in advance, and you might even want to get a pad or a text thing and type out what it is that you're going to use so that you can keep them in order. It will help you tremendously later. So I might want to have my filter attack. So I will create another control. This will tend to default to the last type of knob that you created or altered. So it'll go, okay, that's what you're looking to do right now. And we will go with a vintage medium. or you drag by the knob itself, not by its thing. You have got some sort of thing, which, to be honest, yes, you can align things. So if your things are not organized nicely, we can align them like that. So, to be honest, I hadn't played with them because I do that kind of stuff in, but you've got to have several things selected, because I tend to do that in Inkscape. But here you can also, with aligning, let's look at something we would set. Let's say we wanted these three evenly spaced. Space them horizontally. It'll take the first, the last, and then the buttons in the middle will get arranged based on the space that you've got. So they are a nice feature to have. Let's go back and start to put things back how I wanted them. Nice and close. And this guy, actually I might see if there's even a smaller. Vintage, medium, big, small. Yes, that's the way. That's and see how, because I've set my text to being above, it's above this time. It's another reason why you want to set your styling as early as you can, because the system will then help you by maintaining that styling, which is really very nice. So I want to align that. Yeah, the bottom one was aligned there. So nice creative styling. Beautiful. Actually, I don't like where it's put it. It's not as beautiful as I want it. I want it to be down a little bit. So it'll go where I want it to go. Good. What else might we want from here? I think that'll do. So that's going to be the controls for my synth. Now we're going to want the second filter. So we'll add in, keep thinking to drag it. We'll add in another one of these. And this is going to be well, it's all about filtering, so let's have that as filter 2, because it's always nicer in Roman. It seems more classy and stylish in Roman. I can close that up because I'm not working on him anymore. Do we want to have resonance here? Actually, we do. We're going to have a little bit of a different thing. So we're going to add 2 more knobs. And we will call that one drive, because I do much like the drive on the beginning of Sweeper. It's actually turned out to be very nice. And that was the classic Combinator, wasn't it? So we will try to select several things at once. And then we will go to, it was the small one, wasn't it? Vintage small, which will be for our resonance. Now note that I've called them 2, filter and reso. 2, because when we come to work with these later, if we can't tell them apart, we're going to have some issues. Now, I don't actually like that that's there, so I'm going to move it around. So, if you've put knobs in and they're not in the order that you're going to want them to be, you can rearrange them. Nicely done, Reason Studios. Let's just move this guy down and align him with that one, because otherwise it's not feeling right. Same here, I'm going to align with that one. So it'll find anything that it's going to line up with and show you the alignment. Winning, very nice. And let's move these guys over a little bit. We're done with the Sweeper. Yep, we're done with Sweeper. And now we've got our Echo. This is going to behave a little differently, but not yet. So we've got our Echo. What are we going to want? We're going to want, keep thinking I'm going to drag. That's my bad. Maybe in time they'll give us a drag and drop, but if they don't, I don't blame them at all, because that could be awfully complex. So let's go with a vintage big. It's not as big as that. It says this is important, but it says it's not as important as something else. Delay, so that's going to be our time. We will want a mix as well. So for the moment I'm thinking, well, okay, well, what am I going to want? It won't want to be as big as that. Vintage medium, so that will be mix. Just going to be that fella there. And we are going to want our bass and treble controls, and we're also going to need a master act. See, I knew we were going to need a third. So do we want mix high or output high? I think let's go with output low. See, we can rearrange this stuff and it's all relatively easy. Low. Alright, so we need that pair of filter controls. So enter them, drag them out here. Yep, they're going to want to be there and there. See? Triangulates both sides. And we're going to call them, so just low pass. Why write more letters when you can write less? And high pass. Because that's literally what they are. And they will be controlling this. I'm just thinking about what's in the guts of my device here, and I'm going to add myself another knob for this, which can go in line with those, and that's the vintage small, which is going to be off set. I think that'll do us for now. A feedback. I do need a feedback knob. It would be most remiss of me to not have a feedback knob. That there. That's got to come in line with these. And I need to label that. And change it to the classic Combi. Now obviously we've got some conflicts of location, in other words they're on top of each other. Let's move our high and low pass, but let's not put them there, let's narrow them up a little bit. So there feels all right. Let's take these guys, slide them out. I'm just sort of putting them about there. That's given us roughly the same amount of faceplate space left to right. If you don't have that, then your plate will feel unbalanced. It would be kind of cool if we could put things into groups for when we're doing this, but that's getting a little advanced on these guys. You know, that's getting up into Inkscape territory. So we're not gonna get upset about that at all. We'll pull these back to here because they belong to here far more than anything else. I think we're done. How gorgeous is that? So we can turn off our devices or just leave them on. So for now, let me save this because we want to save things. We don't want anything to disappear. Let's start assigning things. There are a couple of ways of doing that. Now, the first one we will look at, we'll focus on what we're looking at the moment, which is this. We've said the first one's going to be our filter. So let's grab our filter and right-click it. Map to Combi Control. Winning. So because I've named them, and named them wisely, I can see my controls here. If I've got them all in the right kind of order, which I might or might not, let's just go have a look. Yeah, mix is far too early. That needs to come towards the end, as does output. Mix and output, they need to be last. Feedback needs to go there and there. So now we've got things far better arranged than we did here, which means that I can right-click on my Combi. Everything is in the order in which I'm going to want it. This level of organization may seem uncool and uncreative, but it's going to help you to get the right result, and that's always better in creative terms. So we've sent this to, and now we need to pop out of editor and see how the two are now slaved. So for all of our native devices, we can right-click, map to Combi, and it's done. Simple as that. Brilliant. And we can look at our modulation amount. I'll just get rid of that one for the moment. Right click to here. Oh, that was the other button that I wanted. Oh, bad me, forgot something. So let's go and configure. We want another knob. And this one obviously needs to be a small. And this will be speed. Brilliant. I think that's well lined up. Yep, that's good. So we exit that. We can still be in configure mode as we do this. So I can take my attack time. Oh, that's not well organized now, is it? So we go back to configure. Grab my, where's my thing gone? Speed. There it is. Sometimes they disappear off the bottom. Reso mod speed. So now it's in the right location. Out of configure, and my attack time, map to Combi control, speed, right where I want it to be. Just gonna take that edge off slightly. Cool. So that's those first controls done. Sweeper is going to be exactly the same. So we can right click on this guy, we can hit the drive and control it. If we decided, look, I don't think we want to drive this into stupid land, we can make sure that we're on our control, which this is automatically focused for us, and then we can select the range. We could clear our mapping if we want, but I don't want to do that because I'm working on this. And I can say, let's say I only want to offer people 50% of the throw. It goes 100% here, but it should only work 50%. So we can control, actually that knob there, to be honest, I didn't know what it did. So now I move 100% here and it moves 50% here. Otherwise it's going to get Splatsville, and I don't want this to be Splatsville, not this sound. Source range, okay. So that looks like, we can define that so that just like here we said 100% throw of this knob will give us 50% throw of this knob, we can now say that, say 25% throw of this knob will give us whatever we set here, in which case I could set 25% throw of my knob will give me 50% here. And then I could have it pick up and do something somewhere else. That's pretty darned interesting. It's a thing I'd seen, hadn't looked at before. So forgive me as I learn on the job, but that's exactly what makes it a good day, because I learned something. Nice and clear, and you can see how quickly I can work out what things do. This is a thing I like about Reason a lot. We'll go to our frequency, right click, and we will go filter 2. There we go. Right click, and this should be Reso 2. Woohoo! A little bit of a Jimi Hendrix moment. That's good for you. So that's done. See how quick this is once we're set up. Now, we've got a VST to deal with. So we're going to kind of have to work out what to do with that. So I can open my VST and I can try right-clicking on my delay. It doesn't give me the same thing as I did before. Curse you! That's not a problem. We can't right-click on a VST. Fair enough, because it was going to get awfully complex and fail. We can move to our device that we want to control. So we see Subtractor has got controls, Sweeper's got controls. Echo Nest, we can now add controls to it. So this is the old method and tried and true. So we can select delay, and then we can go through and find the parameter. Obviously, how that works in VST is going to vary from VST to VST. Because we've got 2 delay knobs to deal with here, a left and a right, then I'm going to add that same button twice. There we go. And send it to delay right. So now, see, it's moving these just like I bought one. But because I want to be just a tiny bit sneaky, I'm going to set them to being slightly different from each other. So now my delay times are not going to be the same. We can make it super obvious here. See how they're not the same. Actually, I'll let's say 10%. In which case on the other end, nah, bugger it, we'll go. So they will get closer as they get to the end, but not a drama. Forgive me whilst I drag things around that I don't need to. Let's look at the next bit that we're going to add, which will be feedback. So again, we make sure we're on an Echo Nest. We find our feedback knob. We assign that to, well, feedback. Woohoo! Works like I bought one. Now there is the offset control here. Maybe that should be in a slightly different position. I'm thinking maybe it should, in which case let's just drag that around and maybe even put that in the middle. That's probably going to look a little bit nicer there. Take this guy and make him line up with the others. And feedback, there we go. I'm happy with that, so we exit that. So feedback is done. We're now looking at offset. So we add, we find our offset button, we assign that to offset. It's a funny parameter in here, which part of why it amuses me, and let's turn that. We can see that that's working. What that does is it means that the right ends up moving longer every time. If we pull it back in, they start to come together. It's just an unusual feature for an unusual device. Now we've got our next features, our next low pass and high pass, and we're going to take off a rack extension. So let's look at what happens. Oh look, a rack extension gives me this control, link to, and this is my high pass, so I want to link it to my high pass and map to low pass. Let's see if they work. I expect they will. So high pass, yep. Brilliant. And I'm going to use this fella here. Map to Combi is going to be my mix control, which is this. Now I don't want to use the whole throw on this guy because that's just going to become problematic. So it's assigned here. We don't want plus 30 dB. That is just going to get nasty, 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 nasty. So we can set that to minus 30 dB, which is good enough for nothing in this case, to being the same level. So this isn't going to allow us to do a complete wet-dry mix, but we don't need it because the synth is already there. It's just saying how much of the wet signal do we want to pump into the main mix. Now I'm going to try this to see if we can do anything with it. No, we can't. Curse you, Reason Studios. But it's not unreasonable. It could be somewhat recursive for a control to be controlling a controller. That could become somewhat dangerous. So we need to find somewhere else to control output. And I think what better place to do it than here. So we'll map Combi control to output. And now that's given us a volume control for our whole synth. We've now got all the control that we want for our instrument up on its faceplate. Save again, of course. So the next thing that we're going to need to do is to make this pretty. This is where it starts to get a little bit more complex, and you can do this or you don't have to, because remember, we can choose how we want our faceplate to look and make things that are fully functional on the inside. But a good GUI does help us to connect with the device. As Ryan Harlan, I think it was Ryan said, or somebody just said from Reason, oh, when they're prettier, they sound better. Not true. I know he was joking. But it does help us to connect with it. As I pointed out in the Reason video, I've got such a strong connection over time with Scream that I only need to see it, and I don't even need to be reading anything. I fly blind with it because it's so alive inside here. So an interface that makes things come alive for you is definitely the thing that you want to do. Now this is bothering me slightly, that this just isn't the right size. So I'm going to go into configure, choose him, vintage medium, he needs to be vintage big. Otherwise it just doesn't feel right. Doesn't feel right at all. Put him there. Let's drag these down just a little bit, seeing we've created some real estate for ourselves. Exit that. And it's important, you want to play with your device, get comfortable that it's really delivering the results that you want it to, because you're going to end up locking this thing down soon. That's not what I want, that's what I want. And that one is, well, it seems to want to be aligned there, so we will go with that. But find something that flows nicely and go with that. So I'm happy with this. So to make my faceplate, I'm going to need to move out into another program. But before I go there, there's a thing that we really want to do to avoid a lot of hit and miss. And that will be, I will go and grab a snip tool. Windows comes with one, no doubt Apple comes with one if you are so afflicted. I will create a snip. Rather than trying to be accurate in the first place and failing, I will use this or something like GIMP to actually give me the results that I want. So I will use this and crop to the edge. Don't go to where it's fully bright, go to the edge. You can see the difference between black and panel. Go to there. Embiggen this. You can do this easier in GIMP or what have you, but I'm used to doing it here, so I will continue to do it here. If you're 1 pixel off, it's probably not the end of the world, but try to be accurate. So now I've got my faceplate. Now I'm going to need to save that. I'll save that into my inbox because everything goes there. And we will call that very creatively Combi Face Guide. Because this is not going to be the faceplate, it's going to be the guide for it. And that'll help me know where my knobs and buttons are when I start making my faceplate. The next thing I need is to go into Editor and configure, and I need these numbers here. Reason it would be nice if we could copy and paste them. So 3770 by 1035. Now I need to open, and I'm going to use Inkscape. You can use any package that you like. Document properties this way, that's going to be easier. I sometimes do things differently, but this will be easier for you. So we set to pixels. Pixels important. I think it was that, but let's go back and be sure because we don't want to build it the wrong size. So 3770 by 1035. So we'll go back to make that an awful lot bigger. That should be exactly the same size. Oh, and there was a thing I just wanted to do here in the document properties. How you work is going to be up to you. This is how I work. It makes it easy for me. So there's my faceplate. Won't quite, oh yep, there we go. It's just fitting in. I might save this document off already. Not there. Combi II. So this will Combi II faceplate. Preferably, you're going to have a better name for it than that. You know, world's best synthesizer and delay unit, or whatever. Now, we will grab our Combinator face guide, drag it in. That's it. Now we need that to be the right size. So we will embiggen him, whack him into a, normally they go into a guide. No matter, I will create a box. I'll make sure there are no outlines on it, no stroke, and I'll drag him into here. Ah, odd. It's not going to guide. But it was 3770 by 1035, if I am correct. No, that needs to be pixels. Silly me, fall for my own thing. 3770 by 1035. And that seems to be exactly the right size and shape. So now that's my back plate. I take this fella, and I'm going to come to terms with layers as quickly as you can. We're going to create a layer above, and we're going to call that guide. We're going to choose this fella, and I think it was there, but I can't remember where it is. But I know that with layers, move to layer above. So it's now on the guide layer. So if I drag this fella here, see how it clicks to the thing that I've made already and clicks out to here. We might be off by a pixel or two, but if we've been neat and tidy at the beginning, then our guide is exactly the size that we need it to be. Now I'll take my guide and I'll lock it. I will also reduce its opacity because I want to be able to see what's underneath it. You can put your guide at the bottom, but the problem is you're then going to get the wrong sense of what your colors are. So at the moment I can work my colors on this, not that, and then I can drop my guide on top as a way of seeing, but I can check how my colors are going to look. So we've got to work out how do I want this to be. There is a point, and I can't remember what it is, but there is a point at which this stops being this and starts being this. So when you fold it up, it will be a certain height. I can't remember what it is and what the numbers are. It will be a set amount. Write it on a piece of paper for yourself somewhere. If I need it, then I will tend to just draw it on. Now, a great thing with Inkscape is, and any decent program, is you can use modifiers to set things so that they don't wander away. So you can make sure that everything is straight. There is nothing worse than having a faceplate which has got wonky lines. You may think it's cool, but it's going to look awful. Okay, you don't need to create that line, but I kind of tend to. Because now we can separate what is going to fold and what is not. So I'm going to want a few layers of boxes and things. So let's think, what do we want to do? Do we want each of these to be in a separate box? Not my preferred method. Or do we want to have just a couple of boxes which show the nature of what we've got? Sometimes it's great when you're just laying out elements to use really bright garish colors, so that way it's quite easy to see, but as soon as you get a sense of what your colors are going to be, then you can start to transition them to something sane, because this ain't sane. So that's giving me a sense of my sizing and what's going to go where. Matter of fact, I'm going to go with that red on the bottom, and the top one we will go with a let's back it off a bit, otherwise it's going to, actually no, it has to be a light color, sorry, because I've chosen the let's go with it. I've chosen a dark text, so it's important that we do that. You can see the red outline from the document itself. We can actually get rid of that now. It's not needed anymore. Just in case you were going, oh, there's still a red line on the outside. Nah, it's not really there. Actually, I'm going to duplicate that. I had no plan on this, so this is kind of how these things end up being done. It's going to corner, keep that one light, and let's go with the darker, richer color, because that's going to work nicely here. Put my guide back in, and I'll start with a name for my device, because it's nice to have things named. It gives you a sense of what they are, and your brain learns to distinguish one thing from another. So we can call this Super Synth plus echoes. Let's just get that on screen. I pressed the plus button, didn't I? And what color do we want that? Let's go with our bright red. Again, we won't see our colors too well, but you get used to working in one situation with another. Now we can get all manner of fussy on our text. Sometimes it's a bit, I like this one. I tend to use it a lot. Bold condensed. Semi-condensed. There we go. I can drag that out. We don't want our titles to actually overawe the device. That's where my plus went. Super Synth plus echoes. Couldn't be any better. And I know that if I control drag in Inkscape, that it's going to... How sexy is that? With my Y's hanging off the edge. I've lost my little line. Just going to embiggen that a little bit. This is all to taste. And I'd probably put my name on it if it was commercial and all of that, but this is not commercial, and nor am I giving it to you just because I can't be bothered going to the trauma of all the downloads and locations and stuff like that. But we can make this now settle into here, so when this is folded up, we can actually tell what's inside the fold. So Super Synth plus echoes. We're now going to want to make some more text because we want to keep things consistent. We do not want to be using 12 different fonts. I see that far too often where a device will have lots of different fonts on it, and ew, you don't want to do that. Trust me. So this is the synth. We try to make that seem like it's kind of roughly in the middle of its box. We'll duplicate that and control drag it across. It's going to kind of fight with our device, with our filter text there. Now remember, we could actually have turned our text off and replaced them with our own typography. We will call this Super, because it just is. And out here, echoes. Now, if you're using something like Inkscape, you can see the arrows here will show you where the center of the text is. Is that supposed to have an E? I think it is. If I'm spelling it wrong, that's all right. I'm a musician. I don't think, because these have all been lifted to the right, but I don't think it looks right, so we'll go there. We don't need to label the output section as such, but now I've got my labels. Cool. See how it actually looks nicer here with that grey overlay, and that's another way that you can handle your colours. You can go with really full-on colours and then just put a whole patch over the top to get that overlaid feeling. We've got most of our layout, but I've decided that, and I decided this earlier, that I want to do this a little differently. So I'm going to take this, drag it to there, I'll just pull that back off there just a tiny bit, and it's hard sometimes with the things that drag to themselves. All right, so I've got a panel there. I'll duplicate that, drag it out, and this needs to move across a little bit more. So that's where we can use our key commands and what have you. Duplicate, drag out. Actually, ideally, I'll drag this back. Shift. That's up against that. Shift. We want it to be consistent. If our gaps are not consistent, we will feel bad about ourselves. And we don't want to do that, because this should all be really kind of nice stuff. So we will pull this off. Then we'll drag that to there. Actually, we are going to go shift, and then we're going to have to try and do this the hard way. Oh, actually, that's not right, because it needs to be in a completely different spot. Anyway, so let's work out where we want that divider to be. Seems about right. Seems about right. We will go across. And that's being annoying. Actually, what I'm going to do here is what I showed you before. So first, second, third, fourth, we will use our align and distribute. That's where these become really nice, and we want to put them there, except that's not the right way of doing it. I think I've probably chosen the wrong... Oh, yeah, there we go. Gaps between objects equal. Perfect. So now this looks pretty even. Just going to select those titles because you see they disappeared. and we're definitely going to move those once we get back to the Combinator. So I've now got a faceplate. It really is as simple as that. So now that I've got that, I'm going to want to save that, go to my layers and turn off my guide, because we don't want to import the knobs back in again. It's going to look silly. I've done that lots of times. We turn that off and we go to export PNG, page. We only need this at 96, so it's going to be literally the size that we want. We don't want that to come out as some really weird size. And then we want to export that. I will, for now, put that in my in tray so it'll be easy to find. Actually, no, it's called Super Synth Echoes. And make sure you export it. And now I'm back here. I go to Configure and Backdrop. Load. Bottom here, Super Synth Echoes. Close down my editor. I'm pretty right. As I've said, there's a little bit of finesse that I would like to do in here. So I will go into, I don't need the devices open, into Configure, so that I can, well, firstly grab these guys. They need to move across. I can't remember what they were aligned to, but doesn't fully matter. Actually, yeah, those were aligned there, so that is correct. We can align that to something, seeing we want to align it to something. That seems far more in the center, and these guys feel a little off. So I'm just gonna drag those over a little. It would be nice to have the key commands to lock this, because as you see, it starts to go up when I don't want it to go up. But again, I'm not going to bitch about that, because it's a lot in here already. So now I can save that off to my in tray, and this can be the Super Synth Echoes, and that's going to save as Combinator. And now if I go looking for it, I can find that on my drive. So this PC, data D, in tray, Super Synth Echoes. Just like I bought one. See, it really is surprisingly simple. The first time or two you do this, understand that you're going to be a bit like, but take your time and you will quickly discover that you start to get nice results. To be fair, this isn't the nicest looking result. That's what happens when you do everything in real time. But you can see how it works. But creating your own backplates really is as easy as this. I've now got a device that I can pull up and use just like any other synth. And I can also automate that as well. So Super Synth, we've got filter. Oh, it actually does come through. Let's automate filter 2 as well. It is pulling these names through. I thought before it wasn't pulling those names through, but that is brilliant. So now I can set automations on these. Yep. I can set this to play. And hear how that gives us actually a much nicer sounding instrument than when it wasn't automating. So a lot of the power of Reason has just become more powerful because we can now turn our combinators into really fully fledged rack denizens, people that live there and have essentially the same functionality as any other device or any other synth that's a rack extension or native. If you have questions, ask them down below. I pop by time to time and ensure that answers are available if it's a thing that I know about. Benedict again for Higher Hertz. If you found value in this, please subscribe. Pop over to higherhertz.com and subscribe. You have a good day now.